Hello and welcome to another episode of Devs on Tape. Today it is necessary to put a disclaimer in because we don't want to disappoint you with a shorter episode as usual. We met Andy Mandelson at Dork KNA 2022 and we had roughly 30 minutes to fill with our most recent questions we collected. And there was not enough room to talk about all the different topics we prepared, but we hope you like the following episode as much as you like the episodes before. Thank you and have fun listening. Yes, again. Hello. So first, ladies first. Hello, Caro.
Hi, Kai.
And hello to our guest, Andrew Mendelson.
Hi.
So for our listeners, maybe you are not that familiar because you're not that in social media as we noticed. So maybe you can introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. So I work at Oracle and I've been in Oracle for quite a long time. I started as a developer, believe it or not, in 1984, working on Oracle Database version 6, version 5 even. And over the years, I've moved into management. I run most of database development. I share that responsibility with Juan Loaiza, who I don't know if you've had on your podcast yet, but
not yet.
But my team does a lot of the core database software development, and we also are responsible for the Autonomous Database Service. And I also have a team that does customer support for customers using the Oracle database on Exadatas on premises, and also for the customers using our cloud services.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I think this is the right person, Caro, to talk about autonomous database.
Yeah.
Do you think so?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a really big fan, actually, because I love the always free tier of the Oracle Cloud. I'm using it by myself for some private projects and doing stuff there with Oracle Apex. And I wanted to ask you if there were any plans to extend or add services for this free tier plan, for example?
Well, today we have, I think, Autonomous Database for free on the free tier. I don't know that we're going to extend anything in the near term, but we think, we have enough resources for free for you to build pretty much any application you want using the Oracle database or Apex, if you want to do that. And we also, we see the free tier as a way of getting developers to try our stuff. And, even new releases of the database software on-prem, a lot of customers now are just playing with it on the cloud because that's the easiest way to, get an Oracle database, provisioned and to play with. So we're very enthusiastic about cloud. And I know there's some customers who are still not ready for cloud, but I'm seeing more and more that customers have decided, this is the future. We're going to start doing new things, new systems, new applications on the cloud. So we're very excited to hear you're using our free tier for doing some Apex application development, and we're really pushing Apex certainly very heavily right now.
Yeah, that's basically also the next topic on our list, right? So, I mean, just to add my 2 cents, I started the ATP or the Autonomous Database in the free tier to just, run a database, put some compute engine in front of it, and it was all free. And I was very excited to do so because back then I just rented my own server and did all the stack, all the stuff, everything by myself, sometimes using a Docker container to install an Oracle database. And now you can use everything for free. There might be some more promotion that everyone is getting it really, really for free. So you just make a guide, like everyone on the world can use it completely for free. And there are just 3 or 4 steps to get a database. It is not the whole process, right? That might be something we can give as a feedback.
There's the whole simplicity of getting access to very complex technology on the cloud is just unbelievable. And I don't think people quite appreciate the difference between, the classical on-premise world where you have to make provision some hardware and get it up and running and, get the software installed and deal with patching and upgrades. And then on the cloud, like there's nothing. You don't have to do anything. You just build your application. It's incredibly simple.
I mean, the main point is to get them this easy to the free tier. But if we focus on developers, right? So, I mean, it's very obvious that developers are the people in the company who are influencing. I call it influencing because we are in this tech social stuff, influencing their bosses and CEOs of the company that this might be the right tech to get a problem or an issue solved, right? So the question would be, what does Oracle do to enhance this relation to the developers? So how do they reach out morally to the developers so they decide back again, I call it like that, I want to use an Oracle database, we should go all in for Oracle and I will use Apex?
Yeah, that's a really good question. As we move to this world where people are using clouds, the main users of our technology are no longer DBAs. The DBAs are they work for Oracle now. We run the databases for them. And so customers are really, as you said, heavily influenced by what the developers want. And so we are, in database development, we are making a very conscious push to try to communicate more with developers. If you look at what we present, the messages we're presenting, they're very targeted now at developers. We are talking about what we call converged database. And converged database is a developer message. And what we're basically telling developers is, if you want to build any kind of data management application, you want a database that is very flexible. It's like a Swiss Army knife. It can do everything. And Oracle database is sort of like that. And and developers, you would think, should be very much into like, how can I do things fast?
Yeah.
And I want to use whatever technology is going to let me solve my business problem as fast as possible. And so combination of like autonomous database and the converged database technologies, and then something like Apex, it's just unbelievable. And it's like, you're right though, that we have not completely, really succeeded in getting developers to understand this. And I mean, it's actually one of the things we would like to hear from people like you is like, okay, it's great that you're using, Oracle database and Apex and all that, but what do we need to do more to sort of make sure all the other developers in Germany or wherever around the world are aware of this stuff? Because I think that is one of our problems, is people don't know what we have.
Yeah. I mean, the right way is to go on conferences like that. So again, we are very honored that you are attending our podcast today. So, but attending the conference and talk about those topics might be the right step to just reach out to every single guy on this conference here. So for the listeners, we are still on the DORC K&A conference this year. And there are many DBAs here, but there are also very high amount of developers here in this conference. And I think our job is, and that's basically what we are doing and what I am doing 3 times today, is doing presentations about Apex. Because when we are talking about Apex, more people are deciding to use Apex and to reach out to their companies and their bosses. So maybe one thing Oracle could do, and this is not a prepared thing, I just get it out of my head, maybe is supporting conferences on-prem. Basically, after COVID, we can meet each other. We can spread the word out for Apex. And if we are able to reach as many people as possible to say that Apex is great, then more people will see that Apex is great, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, you see this with developers a lot. Is like they want to do what, number one, they see other people doing. They will copy. It's like, oh, he's doing that. Oh, I'll copy that, right? But they also are very fashion conscious. It's like, what do people think is the popular thing for a developer to do today? And, it was Java. 5 years ago, it was Java. Oh, Java is what's cool. And now it's like Python is cool or whatever. And what we really need to get is Apex, for example. It's Apex cool. How do we, it's one of these, it's sort of a difficult challenge because you have to do sort of this viral kind of marketing, because other developers will trust other developers more than they won't trust me, but they might trust you to tell them, what's really cool and productive, right?
Sure. And that is something we noticed from the last years. I think I'm 8 years in this ecosystem, right? Mm-hmm. And I noticed from the first day on that the Apex team is a little bit different than the other teams, because they are reaching out. They're using social media very heavily. Mm-hmm. They're talking to us in the conference. They're not just presenting and disappearing. They're just come to the parties. They catch us on the floor and say, hey, let's talk about what are you doing with Apex and how can I support you with that? Mm-hmm. And we saw the last month or last year that the Apex team is growing and growing. And this is a very good point for us to see. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will see. What are the plans for the future growth of Apex? That would be very interesting for our developers. So what is the plan?
Well, the interesting thing about Apex is it's been around quite a while, right? I think it started in 2002 or something like that. So it's had a long time to mature. And the team running it, as you mentioned, Mike Hichwa is an incredibly enthusiastic guy. Mm-hmm. Mark Seitz, really good. And they do consciously create a community. I was giving Mike a hard time because he was telling me about all these great communities for Apex. Mm-hmm. And it's like, in Germany and in Austria. And it's like, okay, how about China? Tell me about your community. Oh, we don't have anything there. What about Japan? Oh, and so, but Mike is this great guy. It's like, so the next time I talk to him, okay, we're starting something in Japan and China now. We're going to go big there. And, he's going after him. And India, actually, there's huge numbers of developers in India. So we are consciously trying to sort of, make Apex sort of into a virus that is spreading from one place to another. Now, the interesting thing about Apex is that it's becoming a much more strategic technology inside Oracle. Mm-hmm. So traditionally, inside Oracle, lots of people would build projects using Apex themselves. But when we were building our applications, like Fusion, SAS, or NetSuite, or whatever, GBUs, vertical applications, they never used Apex for those applications. They were like, oh, we're real coders. We're going to use Java. And so pretty much everything is coded in Java for our business applications. Mm-hmm. And we had this meeting. Well, actually, the real story is during COVID, Larry Ellison, our founder of Oracle, got very excited about helping the Oracle government sort of monitor the uptake of vaccinations in various sorts. And he wanted to build some applications for them. And he had a choice. He could either do things the good old-fashioned way and get some Java developers to do something, or he could use Apex. And so Larry's like, okay, let me try this Apex thing out. And he started working with Mike Hichwa and Shakib on his team and trying to prototype some applications for monitoring the vaccinations. Mm-hmm. And Larry just got enthralled because they would show him their prototype of the application. And Larry would say, well, can you change that to a bigger font? Or I don't like the text there, let's change it. And Larry was just amazed how easy it was to customize the app. And he could personally do things, which, with a Java developer, imagine trying to change something on the fly in front of Larry in a meeting. It's just not possible, right? Yeah. And so Larry got really excited about Apex. And he went to our application developers, the Fusion SAS people, and said, hey, guys, why aren't you using Apex? And they're like, well, Apex is not for enterprise applications. And, the usual story.
Even inside Oracle, that's very interesting.
No, it's like we use Java and we're Java developers. Like, we don't do Apex. You know that. It's like, that's not, we're coders. We're heavy, we're, macho coders. And, they gave Larry pushback. And so Larry is like, okay, so you don't want to use Apex, fine. And then he talked to our people who do industry applications. They do applications for like banks or applications for telcos. We call them vertical applications. And these guys were much more interested in Apex. And so we now have a policy going on where the people doing the vertical applications are all going to use Apex.
Wow.
And then Larry, more recently, we bought this big company called Cerner. Cerner is in the medical records business. healthcare business. And the first thing we did after we bought Cerner is Larry said, okay, we're going to build a new version of Cerner in Apex. Okay. And so Larry is now sort of mandating Apex all over the place in Oracle. And that is actually going to drive the Apex product in interesting directions, because now if you are just two guys building an Apex app, it's pretty easy to collaborate. But if you're a team of 100 people, Apex wasn't really designed for that, right? And so one of the big things Mike is working on is making Apex a much better player in these bigger, efforts to enable developers to collaborate and do, complex CI/CD pipelines and all the kinds of stuff you need to do in that kind of world. So there's a lot of investment going on around Apex just to support like these Cerner guys and what we call the GBU guys who do vertical apps.
It sounds so interesting. So maybe we just make some advertisement for the Apex Connect next year. Maybe you can attend and tell every developer on the conference what's happening in Apex right now. So I remember the time when the Apex team was starting to work on those COVID apps, and we saw it on Twitter, like in the middle of the night, and they were just exchanging each other to have this solution after one weekend, which was pretty like a POC, which was thrown away. That's what I was told. But it was so interesting to see that the Apex team itself is sitting there and building an Apex application over the weekend to solve such a big need right now. And they're working and seeing what the difficulties are using Apex, and they are building it in the next product. It was a very, very cool story.
Yeah, and I don't know if that application is used in Europe. I don't think it is. But in the US, whenever you get vaccinated in the US, you get this text message that basically says, click here, and it takes you to an Apex application that's running, it's on your mobile phone. It's really, it's obviously running on a server on the internet, but it looks to a user like it's just a native mobile app. It's very, very nice, very easy to use. It's a beautiful little application.
So for the next pandemic, we should stay in touch, because in Germany we have the big players like SAP. So it was like T-Mobile, I think, and SAP, and they did a kind of a COVID app where you have this synchronized thing where everyone says I'm positive and everyone else is notified.
That's a different kind of contact tracing app.
Right, and then we had another app which was the COVID Pass, which basically when you were vaccinated, you get a QR code and scan it, and then you get the certificate on your device and can prove it. Yep. So next time we should say that Apex is the right solution, because the money which went to those two apps.
And we, by the way, did this all for free. We did not, the US government did not pay us a dime for any of the stuff we did.
That's even more good to hear. That's very great. So next time, I will not hope that there will be next time. We will provide an application on the first weekend before everyone else can do something. So now this was basically the Oracle part and stuff. Maybe we can hear something in the following questions about Oracle too, maybe. But we would like to know more about you. So about your career. So we have this basic question: what's the wisest decision in your work life?
So when I left school, I went to work at a company called Hewlett Packard, HP. HP was at the time a very famous company in tech. I went to California. I grew up on the eastern side of the U.S. in Pennsylvania, and I went to school there. And then my first job out of school was HP, so I flew to California to what is now called Silicon Valley. And so that was a very, one of those fortuitous things. It's like, I could have worked anywhere, but I came to California, which turned out to be, it's the center of all the startups and the whole, this is it's still in the 80s, it's a long ancient history, but it turned out, that was one of the great career decisions I made. And it was just luck. It's like, okay, I got a good job offer from HP. And then the job at HP was, they were trying to build a new database. And it turned out it was a relational database, a SQL relational database. And so that's how I ended up sort of getting into the relational database market. And at the time, there were no good products in that space. There was Oracle, and Oracle was on version 5, which was a pretty primitive version of the product. And then there was one competitor which is this company called Ingress. Ingress is the predecessor of what now is called Postgres, right?
Yeah.
And Postgres was sort of the post, as in the second kind of the after project. So it was first, Ingress was first done at the University of California, Berkeley. And the professor who did the project was named Michael Stonebreaker. And basically the next generation of that project, he called Postgres, as a, post means after in Latin, right?
That's interesting. I never thought about that.
But anyway, so Oracle and, anyway, let's not go into Oracle, but I was at HP at the time. And then after being at HP about 3 years, I sort of figured out, HP is a hardware company. And we were doing software at HP. And at HP, they thought, software is something you give away for free for our hardware customers. And it's like, okay, that means they really care about hardware. They don't really care about software because it's free. So they don't make any money on it. And so I sort of thought, maybe I'll go work at some startup. And I got contacted by a startup that was, again, building a relational database. And this startup was called SVEL, but it's not some company you would even have ever heard of. But it was started by a bunch of IBM people. IBM had been doing a lot of research in the database space. In fact, IBM invented SQL. That was done by their research lab. And so I went to this startup. And again, it was one of these lucky things where the startup was in sort of, I didn't realize it when I joined it, but they were sort of in a chaotic state. One of the founders had unfortunately sort of died in an accident, which I won't go into here. And the other founder took over, and the engineers didn't like this guy. And so there was a lot of turmoil there. And it turned out, luckily for me, that after about 9 months, pretty much everybody quit. And when we quit, we were looking, okay, so where should we go? And there were various opportunities for me. There was a company that was started by a bunch of HP people that I knew from my time at HP. It was called Software Publishing. Again, you'd never heard of them anymore. They were bought out by a company called Symantec, which you may have heard of.
That's from the antivirus stuff.
Yeah,
I know that.
but they actually were related to that, although it wasn't antivirus. But it was a software company that did like a little tiny, sort of like a toy database. There was Oracle. I had a job offer from Oracle. I had a job offer from another database company called Informix. Informix was actually a very successful company into like the 2000, 2010, and then IBM bought them. And you know what happens when IBM buys you? Just like the product goes into maintenance mode and you never hear about them again. But anyway, so I was choosing between these companies, and I actually had decided to go work for the Software Publishing because there was a bunch of HP people that I knew. And so Oracle gave me an offer, and I said, I'm going to go to this other company. And they're like, well, okay, what if we doubled your offer? Not salary wise, but more of the stock options and things. It's like, okay, that's interesting. And so I just decided to go to Oracle. And it turned out one of the other guys I had been working with at this company called SVEL had gone to Oracle already. So I already knew him. And it turned out the other guy who was recruiting me from Oracle, it turned out had been recruiting me when I was looking for a job after college to go to Xerox, of all places. There was a software operation at Xerox for this thing called the Star, which I won't talk about, but it was the technology that actually was the ancestor of the Mac. The Apple, what became the Apple Mac. And he remembered me also. So I had this connections with Oracle that I didn't quite realize. So anyway, so that was, again, one of my career decisions that turned out very fortuitous. Like you go to Oracle when it's, I thought Oracle was a fairly mature company at the time. They had been around for about 7 years. However, their revenue was only like $5 million. So they were very small. They had like 130 employees. I was employee number 130. And so, this is really lucky. I could have gone to Software Publishing, which is the company that was one of these forgotten companies because like nothing ever came of them.
Sure.
But Oracle, fortunately, was the right choice. And,
What interesting story. So, but I have the exact opposite. Or maybe, Caro, you have the exact opposite question to that, right?
Yeah. What is your biggest regret in your life, work life?
Yeah, I know. In around the internet, there was this internet boom time in the early 2000s. That again, you may not have been working by then, but
Not yet, maybe.
but you probably
from a
remember a
distance,
little bit of it. And everybody at Oracle was leaving to go to one of these internet startups, and one of them was this company called Webvan, which you've never, again, have never heard of. These guys were the first startup that came up with the idea of they would make an internet website for shopping for groceries. Okay. And it turned out, at the time there was Amazon, which was this internet site for shopping for mostly books at that time. It obviously evolved to lots more. And so groceries, it turned out, was one of these things that wasn't a really good idea. And so I had my wife play around with shopping on their site, and she's like, this is really painful. And I want to touch those vegetables and see what's fresh. And so it wasn't really a regret. It was one of these things where, like, I really wanted to go there, but, Oracle was actually also a good place. And so, at some level, there is a sort of regret that I didn't go to one of these startups then. But on the other hand, staying at Oracle turned out to be, again, it's like a better decision because Oracle continued to grow really fast, even through, the early 2000s. Oracle was very successful. And at the end of the day, betting against Larry Ellison is a bad idea. He is one of the, there are a few really amazing entrepreneurs that sort of dominated the early software space. There was Bill Gates at Microsoft, Steve Jobs at Apple, and Larry at Oracle. And these guys are just geniuses, right? And so one of the best things I did was like, going to one of these startups is sort of like betting against Larry. And it's like, that's a losing proposition, betting against Steve Jobs or betting against Bill Gates. Those guys were just amazing, right? Everything they did, more, not every, they make mistakes just like everybody, but more often than not, they were proven right.
Definitely. But before we end this podcast, I want to squeeze in one question because we, you talked about those tech geniuses, right?
Right.
So we had these questions before. So Elon Musk, everyone knows him, and every other IT CEO right now is using social media. Do you think this is a wise decision from them to tweet that much and that often?
Elon Musk is a very interesting character. So if you had asked me that question 5 years ago, I would have said, Elon Musk is obviously a genius. Right? His marketing of Tesla over social media and everything, all the stunts he did were just amazing, in marketing the product. And, I bought a Tesla. So, but I can tell you now, his act is getting a little old, and I think people are getting tired of him. And the interesting thing is, you look at like Larry Ellison, he's not on social media.
He has one tweet on Twitter, as we learned from Conor McDonald. So he has one single tweet, but so many followers.
But and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, those guys don't feel the need to act out on social media. I think at this point, social media obviously is really important for a marketing tool. And you can see people using it in really powerful ways. I mean, look at what happened in the United States with Trump. He used Twitter to incredibly powerful means. And then you can talk about the people spreading all kinds of disinformation, also showing how powerful it is as a medium. So even in development, we are very conscious of trying to get stuff out there, on LinkedIn or whatever. So we have people who are doing that sort of thing. I don't personally spend a lot of time putting things out, but it is important to get on the right channels so we reach, you asked earlier about developers. You want to be on the social media sites or the sites where developers are there, and that's one way of getting their attention.
Definitely. I mean, Twitter is one of the heaviest used communication system or as a communication platform for every developer on this conference, right? So we are communicating and we are getting our stuff from Twitter.
Really? So you mostly are using Twitter, not Stack Overflow or something?
Twitter is just for communicating in short sentences with one of each other. If we use code and help and so on, we're using obviously Stack Overflow, Ask Tom and so on, and forums, because we have more characters to put in. But for Twitter, it's just, hey, look at this slide. This is nice information. And you reach like 10,000 people maybe sometimes.
Really?
And another one saying, oh, I like that tweet, and I retweeted to all my followers. And that's the way the community was built. And again, the Apex team is very heavy using Twitter. And that's the reason why we are so close to them and see what's happening. So, but
that's great.
Yes, as an executive vice president for database server technologies at Oracle, I read that here. It's such a long title. This episode must come to an end, and we were very glad to have you here. It was very interesting for us to hear what you have to tell us from the past and from now and for the future. And thank you very much, and hope to see you soon in our podcast.
Yeah, no, my pleasure to be here, and I'm glad I could talk to you. And I'll be happy to talk to you again if you want to sometime.
Great, thank you. Danke, Caro.
Ja, danke auch.